Welcome back to the Post Beat podcast. This is episode 7, and today our main topic, as the weather is getting better and our minds drift to ultimate freedoms, is on European road trips. But before we get onto European road trips, we'll do a quick summary of what we've been up to in cars recently. What have you been up to, Jack?
So a couple of things. Talking of road trips, was down with a customer in Cornwall last week, which was fun. Got me thinking about this topic because I spent probably the best part of 8-9 hours in a Nissan Duke there and back.
Oh
The
dear.
poor thing. So probably not the most comfortable, probably not the best car, especially on a long trip. But it did get me thinking about what I would take if I had to go for a much longer stint with other people with me as well. So that was interesting. And then, yeah, on a less exciting, probably more embarrassing note, I still haven't washed my cars. So that's, I know that'd make you laugh. So,
Yes.
but the good news is I got a massive delivery from Hydro. So it's a massive big box that turned up yesterday. I'm keen to open it and see what's in it, but I've ordered a bunch of stuff, including one of those spray bottles, the pre, the post, and the shampoo, and some car cleaning equipment. So I'm going
Yeah.
to give that a good test out this weekend ahead of an event that I'm going to at Mercedes Benz World with Piston Heads. So that's the first car related event I'm going to attend this year as the season's just started. So I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully the sun stays out. How about you, James?
Yeah, the sun has been out. The sun is out right now, so much so that I've got to shut my blind behind me because it's so bright, which is great. I have been. I did some underbody checks on the Jag last weekend with a neighbour of mine. As I mentioned in the previous podcast, there's a mention and an advisory on the MOT about rust near suspension on the rear, and we jacked up the car and had a really good look at it. And from everything that we could see, it looked pretty solid, particularly for the age of the car. And there wasn't any major concerns that I could see. And I remember the previous owner of the Jag told me that he thought at the time that the MOT tester was being a bit overzealous. And on my own inspection, using my own eyes, I feel the same. So I have been a little bit on the fence about what I was going to do with the Jag come spring, but I've got used to running three cars now, which is a luxury, but is a nice one to be able to have more choice about which car you're going to use and picking the right car for the right journey, etc. Like we talked about before. So, having checked the rust underneath, and now that I'm doing slightly more mileage, because I'm commuting to a flexible workspace, which is about 25 miles away. I think I've decided that I'm going to keep it. There's nothing major that's gone wrong with it so far. Um, so yeah, it looks like it's going to stay for at least another season, which I'm excited about. And the other thing that I did was get the 911 out. So on the last pod, I mentioned that I was going to leave it until the 1st of March. I caved a week early and taxed the car in February, even though it was only ended up being for one drive. But that drive was absolutely worth it. So we had some nice weather on the last Sunday of February, and we would just go and see some friends. So I brought the car out early, and that was awesome. I do need to sort out a couple of spots that I missed when I did the ceramic coating, which have left a couple of high spots on the paint. So I need to quickly go back over those, polish them back out because you can't clean them out. You have to polish ceramic off. So got to polish that off, reapply ideally in some better light to make sure that the finish is absolutely 100%. But yeah, it's great to have it back out on the road. I've driven it 3 or 4 times now, and not driving it for 3 or 4 months has made me really appreciate how good the car is. So yeah, buzzing.
And have you got, talking of the season starting, any plans to take the 911 anywhere this year or over the next couple of months?
So in March, I think I've got two things. I've joined a Porsche community called Nineworks, and they're doing a kind of preview morning at the new RPM Technic sales studio. RPM Technic are a Porsche specialist near Tring. So going to go out with the guys for that for cars and coffee in Tring, and then also later on this month at ATP Cars, which is near Aylesbury. They're doing Cars and Coffee morning for their clubhouse event, which I think is on the 28th of March. So hoping to also get to that, kids activities dependent. Um, so yeah, those two in March. And I've also, as I mentioned before, I've got Le Mans, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit later. That's in July. And I've also since booked a mini track day at Bicester Heritage in July also. Didn't really fancy doing a fully fledged, full blown track day for a number of reasons. I've done them in the past, but um, yeah, I've booked like a mini track day in an afternoon in July there on their mini track. So yeah, looking forward to that too. Hopefully, it
Nice.
won't be too.
Yeah, I was tempted. Yeah, I think we spoke about this before, but I was tempted to take my M3 before I got rid of it onto one of those because it's quite a light day. It's not too intensive on wear and tear, and it gets you a good feel of kind of what you could do with the car without spending a fortune on a track day. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'll probably come along to that if you've got a spare seat for me. Love to do that.
I do. I do. Yeah, there's I think it comes with the passenger spot, so by all means come along. I was going to bring my son, but I found out that he's too small. So that you can have kids, but they need to be a certain height, which he isn't. So yeah, he'll have to stay at home for that one.
Might just pass the height then because I'm still quite small.
We'll get a tape
Yeah,
measure out.
definitely. So I guess good segue into, and you mentioned Le Mans, but good segue into road trips, which I guess is the theme of the podcast this week. And the journeys and memories that we've had. Some of the takeaways in terms of the kind of costs, but more importantly, future plans and kind of experiences that we're looking to kind of attain from it. Really. So you've got a lot of experience driving on the continent, James. I know you've done quite a few trips. I guess share some memories with what have you done? I guess more so recently, and what are the memories that you've got, the best memories that you've had in driving in in Europe.
Yeah, so I did some trips with my parents as a kid, and I quite enjoyed that. I think as a kid, it's sitting in the car for a long, long time is some can sometimes get a bit boring. But I think as an adult, it makes sense for so many reasons. We started doing it when I think the first one I did was when my daughter was 5 or 6 months old. We drove to France, and the main reason for doing that was because when you've got a 5 month old, you've got a lot of paraphernalia. You've got a lot of stuff that you need just to survive, and we like the idea of being able to. At the time, I had my E91 325D touring, and we like the idea of just being able to not have to scrimp on what we were taking with us. So and we only had one kid at the time, so we were able to really load the car up. Also keep space in the car to be able to bring wine back, etc. So in general, that journey to Burgundy, which is about 5 hours into France, was pretty smooth. I remember my daughter was crying a lot on the way home and absolutely screaming her head off when we went through the passport control at Calais. Um, but apart from that, it went relatively smoothly. And then since then, we've done trips to the Champagne region. We've gone to Disneyland Paris. I've gone to Loire Valley with my parents as well, and the kids. And then I've done two trips to the Nurburgring in the last 2 years, which has been the different type of European road trips where you're going with a bunch of petrol heads rather than going with your family. So I've done Belgium as well on another family trip. And yeah, I just love the freedom that it brings. I also really like the fact that you kind of, as soon as you leave the house, you're kind of you're not at your final destination, but you're in the final mode of transport that's going to get you there effectively. And you can, when you get to wherever you're going on the continent, you're in a car that's familiar. If you're a petrol head, you're in a car that you presumably love, that's hopefully sort of comfortable, premium, the tool done for the job, etc. So yeah, I think there's a lot of positives, and particularly so when you're with kids and you can do things at your own time and at your own pace rather than needing to catch a plane and running through airport security and worrying about, does your baby formula fit into the 100 mil, all of that type of stuff that you just don't have to think about because you just load up the car, and it's pretty similar to if you're just going to drive down to Cornwall, to be honest. What
Yeah,
about
I
you?
think our road trip experiences are probably similar to our car selling experiences that we covered in a previous podcast. I think you're very much a man of doing the job yourself, whereas I like to pay for the convenience and probably a lot of the hassle along the way as well. With the Part X analogy of maybe flying, and
Yeah.
I guess having six a family of six, so four small children. I mean, it's I guess flying's becoming more expensive. Holidays in general are becoming more expensive as well. And I think if you're going for short periods of time, I think flying is still a good option, and it definitely ticks a lot of boxes. But then if you're going to settle and you're going to tour and you're going to see a little bit more of the scenery, I think the car gives you a lot more options,
Mm.
and you can do that at your own pace as well. So yeah, I think a lot of my memories, I guess when I was younger, I did Eurotunnel. I think I've been on the ferry once, but primarily Eurotunnel, Disney,
Mm.
France, Northern France, those kind of areas. I think yeah, again, I've done petrol head tour, kind of Spa, Nurburgring, and a couple of driving kind of tours maybe 7 or 8 years ago. So not so much recently. And then guess since kids, I've then taken my own kids to sort of Disney and done bits of that. So I guess for me, it's becoming more convenient to take the car, and I think financially, I was looking at the stats, but flying on average to somewhere like northern Spain or France, you know, when the kids are on holiday, of course, because I wouldn't necessarily want to take them out unless I had to. But you're looking at a minimum of about £250, £300 a seat now, return flight from most
Yeah.
airports in the UK, particularly in the southeast, during the holiday season. So I know you can get deals outside, but then that's why they're cheaper. But if you're going when anyone else is going, you are going to be paying a premium. Whereas
Yeah.
I kind of used a bit of chat GP and a bit of AI because I was looking at planning a trip to Spain, to Barcelona this year. And I was thinking if I could stay there for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, it almost makes more sense to bring a car versus flying. And I think it calculated Audi Q7, 3 litre diesel. It reckons with tolls and fuel, circa 750, £800 there and back, including the train or the tunnel.
Oh, right.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't think that was terribly bad value for money, because I suppose if you're going to be in a place for more than a couple of weeks and you want to then tour around, you then be hiring a car, and again, you're paying a premium for
Yeah.
probably a very basic car, and especially with a family of six, we're looking at probably a van or something massive
And then you got to
to
worry
do
about
that.
car seats. You've also got to worry about airport parking. Yeah.
And everything, all the insurance, everything that comes with it, you're almost like, well, actually, if you're going to go there for more than maybe a week or two, then it almost makes a lot more financial sense, and it just becomes more comfortable taking your own vehicle. So yeah, I fully agree. What's the biggest observation you see though driving on the continent versus, I guess, the UK?
Lane discipline.
Yeah,
Lane discipline. Um, I I love the lane discipline on the continent. Most of the motorways are only two lane, and it's basically you're either overtaking or you're in the inside lane. And that's exactly how it should be in the UK. I do notice though that on some European motorways where there is three lanes, you do get that creeping in of the hogging the middle lane problem that we have in the UK. So maybe we should move all the motorways in the UK to two lane and see if that helps, because you do get less people that hog the fast outside lane. Um, but the other thing that I think that drives that is just in the UK, people are too polite and they will sit behind someone that's hogging a lane and they won't do anything about it. If you're in Europe, you know about it. If you're not going quick enough, someone is like a foot from your rear bumper, flashing their rear lights as if you're on the Nurburgring. Um, they want you to get out of the way and they let you know about it. And I think that's one of the drivers for having better lane discipline.
I think
Um,
you're onto something there, by the way, because I think we've gone the other way where we're almost going to smart motorways now, which I think statistically seem more dangerous from what I've been reading as well. The fact that we're losing the hard shoulder, the fact that they're now creating another lane because they don't want to necessarily widen the physical size of the road.
yeah.
Whereas maybe if we went the other way and there was a bit more discipline involved, perhaps you're onto something there, and that could save a huge amount of money in the process. So, yeah, interesting. And I guess the you mentioned the fact that you'll know about it. If you're in the wrong lane in Europe, I think you know about it, and again, they're not afraid to tell you. Fast forward, into the autobahn. I mean, I know you've driven on that, and I've driven on that in the past as well. And I mean, that was an interesting experience, because then you add speed and velocity to that problem. What was that like? What's your experience been like driving on the autobahn?
Yeah, I only did it. one. I've only done it once, and I did it on one of those Nurburgring trips, and I was with a group of 5 or 6 M cars. So you can kind of imagine what happens as soon as you go through that sign that says "de-restricted." You know, it's foot flat basically a convoy of 6 cars with adequate spacing, obviously. But yeah, everyone wanted to let free, and it was that ultimate feeling of being free in a car, which was awesome. Again, you have great lane discipline. You have people that understand the fact that there could be very quick moving vehicles in that fast lane on the outside, so they're checking their mirror from a far further back than people in the UK would when they pull out on you. So yes, you have to be very disciplined. Yes, you have to really think about the speed that you're going and the stopping distances, etc. But yeah, I love it, and I hope it doesn't go away anytime soon. And I would like to go and do a little bit more on it, to be honest, because I probably only drove on a de-restricted area for about 15-20 minutes. So I'd like that to be a couple of hours, ideally.
And those are some of my favourite memories that I've got. Is almost the tours around, not necessarily driving on the Nurburgring, because I've actually had a bit of a sticky experience myself on there, which we could probably cover in another episode. But it was more the roads around the Nurburgring, the fact that the tarmac's immaculate, that there's some great scenery. You've got the Black Forest, you've got some of some incredible driving roads all the way across Europe, and that coupled with good driving discipline, um, I guess makes it more enjoyable, right? You can almost really enjoy the freedom, as you said, and the car that you're in at the time, rather than worrying that someone's going to pull out or you're going to get stuck behind something and you're not going to be able to enjoy it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, what's your experience been like? Have you come across, I guess, any really good driving roads that we should put on our radar anytime soon?
I, it's a tricky one because quite a lot of my trips have been with family, so naturally you're doing a bit more motorway. On the trips I've done to Germany, I've definitely found some good roads, and there are a lot of amazing roads right near the Nurburgring, just because of the
Mm.
geographic nature of where the Nurburgring is. There's a lot of elevation changes, etc. But increasingly, it's not the done thing to be driving quickly on the roads around the Nurburgring. It's almost like there are a bunch of people that go and do that, and it's very much frowned upon to do that, and it's not the right culture, etc. You've got the best racetrack in the world on your doorstep. Like, why would you speed through roads? But I have done a little bit. The road from Adenau up to Nurburg is an incredible little twisty road through the trees. Remember doing that relatively late at night and having some fun on that. And also we did a day trip to Cockham, which is probably an hour or so from the ring. And again, the roads there and the final destination are awesome. And when you're doing it with a group of friends in a convoy, yeah, super enjoyable. So this year I'm not going to Germany for the first time in 3 years, and I'm going to Le Mans. So I need to do a bit more planning about an enjoyable road trip down there. Some of the French D roads are really really fun to go through, like through some of the twisty roads in the villages, and again, as you say, very well paved. So need to do a bit of planning on that to try and get the best, most enjoyable route down to Le Mans. Is the plan for this year.
What do you think? How do you think you would do that? Would you get the tunnel again? Because I know you're a big fan of that. Or would you get the ferry? Because I know a lot of people that do Le Mans go from, is it Portsmouth to Le Havre, I think, or they get a
Yeah,
slightly different route than going over from Dover. So yeah, it'd be really good to get your, yeah, which way are you swaying towards, and is there any secret hacks that we should know, given the fact that you're a veteran on the Eurotunnel now?
yeah, I'm doing Eurotunnel again. Just for like I think if you live relatively near to Folkestone, that option, even if you have a slightly longer drive in France, like the journey just kind of just makes sense that way. So I'm doing that again, and that was the route offered by the I'm going with Lycean Events, who have a private camping area like on the circuit. First time I've done it, but it came well recommended from the guys at Nineworks. So that's what I've ended up booking, and I do have a hack, and I've used it I'm using it for both of the European driving trips I'm going on this year, one legitimately and one not legitimately. So if you, when you book, if you put down that you have a top box, you get put in the nice, large, wide carriage. Um, with like motorhomes and people towing other cars, etc. But you'll see when you go in that carriage also that there's quite a lot of sports cars going to the Nürburgring, etc. People that effectively don't want to curb their wheels in the very narrow, small carriages that you get put in otherwise. So you do have to pay extra for this. I think it's usually about 25 ish quid. But yeah, when I go to Le Mans, I'm going the 911, and I just ask them, can you make sure that you mark it down that I've got a top box? And even though I won't bring a top box, you still, because you've paid the extra money, you get allocated in the large cabin. So that is definitely a winner.
I was gonna say I tried. So last time I went to Paris, I took the range, and it's a 6x6 car, 6 foot by 6 foot, 6 foot six wide, and I think
Mm.
the small cabins are 6'6". So I was almost crawling to make sure I didn't hit a wheel on one of those horrible corners that they've got along there. So yeah, that was that's I'm definitely going to use that in the future, particularly if I take a wide car as well, because they are quite narrow to get in and out. But
I imagine
I think
from a
probably
height perspective as well, slightly difficult because it's double decker, isn't it? So if you're in a tall 4x4, I mean, you're not going to scrape the roof, but it must also just be a little bit claustrophobic in a much bigger car. I went in the small carriage in my M4 last year, and I remember having to basically hang my head out the window as I was driving down the train, because again, even in that car, which did have spaces on it, but even so, like I barely had any clearance on the rear with the wider tires and spaces on the back. So yeah, it was tricky.
good hack. Yeah, I guess one of my scariest experience, if you've ever driven in Paris, just thinking of memories. I remember driving on the Arc de Triomphe roundabout, which is I don't know, it's probably the equivalent of about 10 lanes wide. It's massive, and it's the weirdest roundabout you'd ever drive on, I think, in your life, because the people coming onto the roundabout have got right of way, which is obviously very different to the roundabouts that we're probably used to here in the UK, where if you're on the roundabout, you've got right of way and people have to kind of let you go. So you're almost coming around the roundabout, say 30, 40 miles an hour, and you've got people coming on at 40 or 50 mile an hour in some cases onto the roundabout, and you're having to let them on and slam your brakes on. So that's a very interesting roundabout to drive around if you ever want to see some
Yeah, it doesn't
interesting
sound that
driving.
appealing, and I have seen some videos that look a bit hairy. So, I mean, one thing I would say, I love driving in Europe, but I don't really enjoy driving in big cities in Europe. Um, I think driving in big cities in the UK is probably a lot easier than it is in. I've done it in like Florence. Um, there's probably a couple of others in hire cars, and yeah, the rules are tricky.
Mm.
And the the discipline on the road is also tricky. I haven't done Rome, but apparently Rome is an absolute nightmare as well. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
Florence is probably a really strict one, I think, in terms of laws and tickets and what you have to pay for per day and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's what's putting me off. I think driving more so recently in the city is just understanding what you're liable for, really, I think, and where you can park and all that jazz. So, but yeah, I totally agree. I think some of the other experiences I've probably had an equal amount of time behind the wheel on the continent I have in the US, and their driving style is obviously polar opposite. I think you overtake, undertake, doesn't matter what lane you're in. I don't think there's any lane discipline at all there. But the lanes are probably 3 car widths wide in some cases. So I find that probably a very easy, very boring. The driving is probably less engaging in most parts. However, I did more recently do a road trip on the West Coast, which was landing in San Francisco, picked up a convertible Mustang, and me and a colleague we were out there for work, and we had about a day spare. And because of the jet lag, we were up at like 5 5 a.m. or something. So we were like, right, the sun's coming up. It was middle of the summer anyway, so we were like, right, let's get in the car, get the roof down, and go. And we did a 16-hour stint from San Francisco down to Carmel, Pebble Beach, where it's really, really. I mean, that's got probably the one of the best car cultures in the world there. So there was some.
Mm.
We had breakfast there, and that was really interesting seeing what we saw down there. And then we sort of headed a bit further down the coast and then inland to Yosemite. And again, every hour the scenery was just completely different. You go from like coastal then you go through mountains, then you've got plains, and maybe almost desert landscape, and then you kind of end up in these kind of forests in Yosemite, and that was cool. Again, maybe not the most thrilling, and they were quite speed conscious over there, so you had to constantly keep an eye on what you were doing. But
Mm.
as a scenery goes, it was interesting, and the road surfaces in general were all pretty good, apart from some of the motorways that we hit. But it was 16 hours stint in a 5 litre V8 Mustang with the roof down. I've got this huge red line, this burn mark, because I forgot to put cream on the top of my head. And I remember going into the meeting that I had the following day, and everyone was like, "Oh, I know what you've been up to." So that was,
Yeah.
again, I've got some fond memories of driving in the US, in Orlando, and other parts of the US as well. And again, the experience is just completely different.
Mm.
But I think more relatively going back to the continent, I guess travel is becoming more and more expensive. So actually, the car option, even though Eurostar and Eurotunnel and the ferries are all going up, I think when you're looking at family holidays now, it's almost still very compelling
Yeah.
versus maybe going further afield.
Hmm. Yeah, agreed. Absolutely agreed. Okay, so we should we move on to our ending piece, which is usually what we talk about with peak car. And this week we're obviously going to talk about peak car for European road trips, given the main topic of the pod. So I thought it would be fun to break this down into three categories because I think road trips, from my experience and most people's, they're very different depending on what you're doing and who you're with. So we break it down into your ideal car for a family road trip abroad, maybe your ideal car for a holiday with your partner, and then a petrol head type car for that type of trip to the Nurburgring or to anywhere with some awesome driving roads. So, do you want to kick us off, Jack, with your ideal family road trip car?
Well, I've kind of had some thought about this over the last day or two, and I just saw a picture last night actually of the Alpina sorry, it's the X7 BMW.
Oh yeah,
It's the one with the what are they called? The seats with the armrests, the kind of captain's chairs in the back. So it's almost like a six-seater layout. So
yeah.
originally I was thinking maybe like V-Class Mercedes kind of van, but then that's not particularly fun, and it's almost you're driving a van then. And I thought practically for a family, the way that, with four kids, that'd probably be a really comfortable vehicle. It could be,
Mm.
you can get a lot of stuff in it. But I thought no, we'll keep on the car theme. We'll go down the petrol head route. So I would say for me, family holiday, something like an X7, I think would be pretty cool, especially with the captain seats and a roof box on the roof. I think you get everyone in there, everyone be comfortable, and you'd arrive in luxury, which would be good. What about you? What would your family tour car be?
My family tour car would, for European trips, which is very apt because you can't actually get this car in the UK. You can get it in Europe though. Is an M550D touring. Now you could go for an Alpina D5, for example, touring, and I think that's also a great option. I don't think they made it in. I don't think they made the touring in the G series though. I might be wrong on that. They definitely did a B5. I'm not sure they did a D5 touring. They did in the previous shape in the F10. But anyway, 550D for me would be awesome. Main reasons are you've got a diesel, so you're still going to get probably 40, 45 to the gallon on a long trip, which means that you don't have to stop as often for fueling. You've got a massive amount of torque for overtaking when you need to. And my M340D touring is pretty much perfect, other than size. I think if you've got a family of four or five, then you, the more space, the better on a European trip, basically. So, yeah, M550D touring for me would be peak.
Nice. And then I guess
What
moving
about
on to the
yeah? What about what you would take to go maybe to the south of France with your partner?
So yeah, that's a really broad, because do you go impractical? Do you go comfort? Do you go high up, low down? I think for me it would be Bentley Continental, especially one of the newer shape. I think they're stunning cars, and you can just imagine that would just eat up the miles. Probably wouldn't give you the best MPG because I think that's still got like a W16 engine, some 6 litre thing. But I just think you'd arrive in style, comfort. You'd probably be ready to get out and enjoy the rest of the day. You wouldn't be too knackered after a 10-hour stint behind the wheel on that car. How
Mm.
about you?
Yeah, the interiors. I think the interiors on modern Bentleys are just fabulous. I really, really, really like them. So I think that's a good shout, particularly from an interior perspective. I like the idea of being able to get to where I'm going, particularly if it's somewhere like on the coast, and be able to cruise around in the evenings with the roof down. Personally, so my choice is an Aston Martin DBS Superleggera Volante. And I picked that because I think I haven't actually seen the boot space in it, but obviously with it being a slightly bigger car, my hope is that you would have ample boot space in that. Plus, you've got a small amount of capacity in the tiny rear seats that it's got as well for items that you need quick access to, handbags, backpacks, etc., etc. Um, and then you can do the top up or the top down thing, and you're obviously in a drop dead gorgeous car that's great for doing long distances in. So I think we've gone for similar options there, both that are financially unviable, but they're nice to dream about, right?
I was going to say, I don't know how peak they probably are, but I think that you're just keep thinking if someone threw the keys to any of those cars, I think in a heartbeat I'd be quite happy driving them down or taking them on a long distance journey for
I'll tell you
sure.
what,
And
if
then
for something more realistic, what I would go for on that same vein would be a 3 litre petrol, so like a 440i convertible, where you've got that kind of similar type of outlook, but a much more affordable price. So good power, smooth, comfortable. I mean, the interior of my G series M340D is absolutely lovely. And I think if you had a nicely spec one of those, you could get something for like between 35 and 50 grand, depending on how new you wanted it. I think that would be pretty awesome for a journey like that too.
or even like the M4, even it's probably similar vein, right? But you could probably
Mm.
get a convertible M4 which ticks a lot of the boxes, and they're relatively affordable now. I think they're. I've been looking myself actually thinking about what I could get this summer, and that was definitely in the list. Don't know if it would meet the short list, but you can get a really nice spec M4, low miles, for probably around the 20K mark now. And that's a lot of car for the money with the performance. But you've also then got the roof down option as well, and so
Yeah,
that could be a contender, maybe at a more peak affordable price point for sure.
yeah.
And then finally, I guess again, sky's the limit. You're going on a petrol head tour kind of thing. You're taking a load of guys over to the continent to hit up some roads. What would be your weapon of choice for that?
So one of the things that's really surprised me about my 911 is how lovely it is to drive when you just want to cruise, and how easy it is to drive when you want to cruise, and then how kind of compliant and ferocious it can be when you put it into sport mode, drop some gears, put it into manual, and hit some twisty roads. I think it would do amazingly on a longer trip. Sorry, abroad, where you don't always want to be 100% on it, because you've got motorway miles to chew through, whatever. But then when you get to the right road, you can just absolutely unleash it. So I'm going to go with any of the modern, so 991, probably any of the 991 Carreras. And the reason why I would pick those over, for example, a GT3 is because I think that a GT3 or certainly a GT3 RS might be a bit too compromised on the like 70% of the journey, which is effectively driving on motorways. I think it'd be awesome to trailer a car like that to the best roads and then use it there, but I'm not sure it's the best car for doing the whole journey. My M4 was really good at doing trips like that as well, but the 911 is for me like another level, and manages both that comfort and fun all in one. What about you?
Yeah, I missed the T. Thinking of that, it's just bringing back some memories of the 991.2 T that I had, and yeah, again because it was it wasn't naturally aspirated. That was the 3 liter
Yeah.
turbocharged. That used to just chill. On the motorway, it was relatively sedate on the motorway. But then, the second you drop down a few cogs and you hit a B road, you could have a lot of fun. And it was a Jekyll and Hyde car, but then you had the practicality. My one had rear seats optioned as well, so I had
Yep.
the rear seat pack in mine, and yeah, it was almost like a great all rounder, really. So you could easily take it on a long trip, and even down to the fact that I found it quite fuel efficient. Maybe it's because it's the 3 liter, but I
Mm.
found the MPG pretty good. The tax was pretty low on it, so it was almost a really low cost, manageable, maintainable car to run at the value that they are. So yeah, I think that's a great contender. Mine would be less practical, just because I want to let my hair down. I'm probably on the verge of a midlife crisis at the moment at some point. So mine would be a 918 Spider. It'd be a
918 or 981?
oh, sorry, seven. Was it the Boxster Spider 718 seven
Oh,
one
seven.
eight
Okay.
918. God, that'd be money no object, wouldn't it? Imagine that. That would be a real contender. I mean, suppose we could stick on the theme, but it's probably the same type of car. Okay, yeah, one's mad, one's absolutely incredible, but
Yeah.
something that maybe is a little bit more attainable around the Carrera price point would probably be a 718 Spider. And if I could, again, very not very practical. You can take a lot of luggage with you in that. And a friend of mine actually had one, and he actually ended up doing a tour with someone with a 4 liter GTS Boxster. And
Yep.
he actually said at the end of it, he'd wished he was in the Boxster over the Spider, because he said every time they wanted to put the roof up, because they were constantly putting the roof up and down, they were driving into tunnels, they were driving into towns where they had to get out and
Yeah.
move around and stuff. And they were saying, within a few seconds, the roof was up in the Boxster, and but the Spider obviously is a little bit harder to kind of get in and out of in that sense. So yeah, but for me, I'd want the pain. I've never had one. I want one. I think they're probably one of the most stunning cars at the moment. So I'd probably go down that route, to be honest with you.
Yeah. The Spider does look special. Very
I'd get
special.
out there off the bucket seat shaking, wishing
Yeah.
I was in the 911. But yeah, I'd love that experience. Then we could always could do one trip and then maybe swap it for something else. Who knows?
It's making me want to book another trip just thinking about it. And hopefully we'll have the same feelings for some people that are listening. And if it does, or if you're planning a road trip this year, and you want to tell us about it, then please let us know. Love to hear in the comments, or separately by a private message if you want. Yeah, European road trips are the best. Right, let's call it to a close there. Thanks very much, Jack, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. Happy motoring.
See you soon.
Bye.